Get in on the action this season with Underdog's Pick'em game. Select higher or lower between 2 and 8 players and compete for up to 325 times your entry. Use code DIRECTOR when signing up to receive up to $1,000 in bonus cash and a free pick. Go to Bolt fam, it's the Director. Chargers fans, we've been living on cloud 9 the last 3 weeks, right? Don't look now, but the Chargers have won 3 in a row. This team going into this awesome Sunday night football matchup, 6-3, mind you. This team is starting to heat up. It's starting to catch the attention of the rest of the NFL. I got buddies that aren't Chargers fans saying, hey, man, how about them Chargers, baby? I think we're finally starting to break through, man. The Jim Harbaugh effect is finally starting to come, into fruition. Here's a matter of fact. Let's go ahead and show you guys what's going on behind my fat head right here. You see that right there, man? That is the look of success right there. That is the name of the game in Jim Harbaugh creating success in LA, and it's working. And it's working miraculously in his first season. This matchup's going to test that, though, man. There's a lot going on out there, too, in terms of narrative. For one, there's the one side of, like, here come the Chargers, baby. They're here. They're for real. And then there's the other side of, we'll say, pessimists, which, honestly, it's totally fine, right? Realists will even say, noting that the Chargers, maybe going up against lesser competition, really need that test, right? They really need to go up against that unit to prove they're a top 10, team in the NFL per the most recent power rankings, that they're a top defense in the NFL with Jesse Minter. And what better, test than the Cincinnati Bengals and the dynamite connection we've seen between Jamar Chase and Joe Burrow these past couple of weeks. It's going to be a good one, man. Just get ready for fireworks. This game's going to be absolutely nuts. I'm a little jealous I'm not going to this game in person, but I am going to a game the week after. If you guys want a chance to meet me, I'll go ahead and let you guys know that here in just a second. Before we do kick things off, though, in this awesome matchup preview, guys, shout out to the sponsor, Underdog Fantasy. Use code DIRECTOR to receive up to $1,000 in bonus cash. Newcomers, take advantage of the Aaron Rodgers free pick. I think there might even be one tonight for Thursday Night Football as well. Definitely one of the best ways to support my platform while having some fun along the way. Before we do kick off, hit us up with a like and sub if you do enjoy this Chargers content. Small amount of time you guys take to hit the like, sub, and bell notification. Helps me out a lot. Let's get into it. Lights, camera, action.
Who's got it better than us?
Your Chargers versus Cincinnati Bengals game preview. Dudes, this one's going to be a lot of fun. Again, jealous I'm not going to be there in person. However, me and Mrs. Director have nailed down the game that we're coming to this season. We weren't actually sure we were going to make it out to one this year, but we will be attending the Har Bowl coming up November 25th. I actually have the announcement right here. Ha-ha! We'll be attending the Chargers versus Ravens game, Monday Night Football game, coming up here in a couple of weeks. Very excited. If you guys want a chance to meet me, I think I'm going to actually be wearing one of these black jerseys I got gifted. Kind of cool. Could they see the director on the back, right? Yeah, pretty nice, pretty clean, and should be a lot of fun. So if you guys want a chance to meet up with me there, I'm usually at Thunder Alley around 3 hours before the game starts. And shout out to Ricardo, by the way, who's setting us up with some nice seats, is all I'm going to say. You're going to see some cool stuff on the social media here pretty soon. Let's go ahead and jump into the first topic of this game, the Chargers and Cincinnati Bengals injury report. A couple of names to keep an eye on out here, because quite honestly, it's all going to come down to some pretty big positions on both sides. On whether or not someone's going to tip the scales here. Both teams have tendencies that have leaned one way or another in terms of how you want to attack their defense or who's going to be the dude on offense. And there are some injuries that could, again, kind of tilt the favor one way or another. For the Chargers, a couple of guys to keep in mind right here. Dayan Henley has been one of the best linebackers. I'm not just talking on the Chargers. I'm talking the entirety of football in the NFL so far this season. And the Chargers, hoping that he can kick whatever illness is bugging him. I'll tell you guys right now. Like, if you guys were wondering, hey, director, where was the Monday, game, post-game report video? Man, I was sick as a dog, dude. I mean, you just trust me. You get kids in public school, and you're trying to, pop all of them airbornes and vitamin C. It doesn't help. It'll get you every once in a while. We're hoping that Dan Henley is able to make it and not have any drawback from the illness, because we're certainly going to need him. This is going to be one of those games where the defense, the Chargers, we're going up against one of the best, if not maybe the best quarterback receiver tandem we're going to see all season long. We're going to need to make sure we got Dan out there. And that can also go for Christian Fulton right now, who the last I've heard, who's dealing with a hamstring injury, the last I heard is optimistic that he's going to be playing on Sunday. Again, nothing's for sure, but I think it was actually Christian Fulton saying that he did expect to play Sunday. So that would be a huge, huge boost to the defense, who has been kind of, working it out in the secondary. Like, what's going on with the Chargers corners in particular this season? Well, I don't know, but the guys going out there in terms of depth, Cam Hart-Reeb still, Christian Fulton, a great free agent acquisition this season. He's been awesome. We're going to need him this week desperately, and the Chargers are going to need, again, all the help that they can get defensively versus this particular offense. Joey Bosa's been limited. Hopefully he gets more of a workload this week. It just kind of feels like the Chargers are slowly working him in. You can kind of think the same thing about Khalil Mack now that he has, been dealing with a groin injury as well. We're hoping both of these guys get a little bit more work this week. Don't push it. We've got the depth and, edge to really, still make a big difference this game. We're going to need that position. But I do expect both these guys to contribute in some way. Joey Bosa, who was limited this last week, did log a sack and made, his presence known. So we're hoping to see the same thing this week. Last couple of things. It sounds like Hayden Hurst should be all right. It's a personal, non-injury related rest day for him. And then, of course, Khalil Mack. Again, we're hoping to see him play. Everybody else, we're kind of a wait-and-see situation here as we are filming this a little bit early this week. As for the Bengals, we do have a little bit more clarity as they've already submitted their Thursday injury report. And there's a lot of names on here, man. I mean, Orlando Brown. He's getting a limited practice in, a chance that maybe he does play on Sunday. But that is a big one. That is a massive one. Is he their left tackle, right? He was right tackle, moved left tackle, right? That was the whole point of him moving from the Chiefs. Yeah, that would be a big one. He is definitely one of the better tackles in football. And to not have him versus the Chargers, particular defensive line, that would be pretty disastrous for a Bengals team who is already struggling to keep Joe Burrow upright. That team definitely needs a lot of help in pass protection. Missing Orlando Brown would be pretty huge. Joe Bacci, don't really know the guy, but did not practice. Alex Kappa, another offensive lineman, another one of which I do know, also not practicing with an illness. I don't know why he's not on the injury report. Maybe it just sprung up this Thursday, which is, more often than not, illnesses, people tend to come back and play. But, man, if it does affect, Orlando Brown, Kappa, that spells disaster for the Bengals if both of them were to miss time. Trey Hendrickson, rest days for him. I do expect him to play. He's definitely their best, maybe defensive player on their team. And then, of course, Charlie Jones down here, wide receiver. So there you go. There's your injury report. More or less undefined, but, there's a lot to go on in terms of what's already established for the identities of both of these teams, right? Yeah, the injuries are certainly going to tilt things one way or another, especially if the Bengals offensive line can't suit up to full. Even with one of those guys missing, it's going to be a pretty tough go at it for them. And then on the Chargers side, whether or not they have two of their best, edge players out there will also determine a little bit. Now, let's get into the meat and potatoes of this matchup, man. All I'm going to tell you, dude, if you're looking for a good football game, if you're looking for an exciting experience, tune in to Sunday Night Football this upcoming weekend, because, man, dude, this is a heck of a matchup right here. Good for the NFL flexing this into Sunday Night Football, guys, because, man, is this going to be good, man. That's all I'm going to say. I get your special sock out, nerds. It's going to get good. It's about to get good, man. It's going to be a lot of fun out here, man, because of the narratives, right? Of course, you got the Joe Burrow, Justin Herbert narrative. That's always going to be a thing, right? These guys, obviously, the crown jewels of that particular draft class. But then you get into who these teams are today. The Jim Harbaugh, Justin Herbert Chargers, the Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase Bengals. Two teams that have clashing identities, right? In terms of offense and defense, it's that classic narrative of the unstoppable force meets the immovable object. Because if you've been paying attention, man, like this has been an insane year for both teams when it comes to certain metrics. Yeah, the win-loss record doesn't reflect that well for the Bengals. Maybe even not the Chargers when you really think about it. But there really is an identity attached to both of these teams that make for a very, very interesting game this Sunday. The Bengals being an offensive powerhouse, obviously behind that tandem, wide receiver and quarterback, and the Chargers, who recently have been known to score. Mind you, the last 3 games, they've scored at least, 26 points. Absolutely incredible. But really known for their defense. The Chargers' defense has been among the best as I've ever seen as a Chargers fan. And it's going to be a test for both sides here, man, because like I mentioned at the top of the video, there are some quote-unquote realists out there who are going to point out that the Chargers have been facing a lot of teams that maybe don't have the most polished of offenses. Maybe they don't have their starting quarterback. Maybe a whole bunch of different roads leading to the top scoring defense in football, right? And that's fair to say. You know, we're not knocking on that. That's fair to say. You know, who are the Chargers? Well, right now, a defensive football team that's really been bringing it to some lesser, we'll say lesser competition, right? But the same can almost be said about the Bengals. Test for both sides. The Bengals, they've played some crappy defenses. You know, Jamar Chase and Joe Burrow have gone bananas versus one particular team that's been boosting their stats a little bit, the Baltimore Ravens, who have perhaps the worst passing defense in football right now. Raise your hand if you played against one or both of those guys in fantasy last week. Man, dude, I knew I was in trouble in many of my leagues last week. Joe Burrow put up over 400 yards. Jamar Chase, like 200-something yards, 3 touchdowns. Incredible production we've seen out of those two. But again, they played maybe some less than stellar defenses through the year. The Chargers have played against some crappy offenses, which has led us to allowing very little scoring. So that's where this all comes to a head for both teams, for both narratives. Who's for real? Are the Bengals offense for real? I'm going to say they are. If they can go up against the Chargers, the top scoring defense in football, this revelation that Jesse Minter is putting together, they're for real. I do think they are for real, which is going to make the Chargers test even tougher. Are the Chargers on this hand now for real? Can they stop a tandem like Jamar Chase and Joe Burrow? You could tack on T. Higgins there as well. I don't know, man. It's really a battlegrounds and a chance to prove yourself, because this offense, this is for real, dude, in my mind. And what's funny enough, too, is if you look at the Cincinnati Bengals schedule this year, and you take a look at a lot of the games that they've played, what are they right now? 4-6, right? 4-6. Definitely something you can work with, but yeah, they're teetering on the edge now of like, are they by, circumstance and by some, unfortunate, endings here and there, are they going to miss the postseason? I don't know. I wouldn't think so. I think they're too good. But at the same time, they remind me a lot of what the Chargers have been dealing with these past several seasons, right? Where you kind of get to the very edge of greatness, right? You're like, man, this is going to be one of those legacy games that go down in history, especially the last couple of games you played against the Ravens, where it's just like, man, they really went out and they fired all cylinders and the offense was clicking and this and that. And then just at the last second, you drop the ball. And what coulda, woulda, shoulda turns into the, oh, man. What a epic disaster, an epic collapse. They chargered it. They've been chargering this season a lot. I think their record doesn't speak to how good they are, man. 4-6 Bengals. I think this team, we got to view them more as on like our win level, like 6-3. Like I think at minimum, like that's, you really are going to be facing head on a team whose win-loss record does not reflect the talent and the danger that they're going to be bringing to SoFi Stadium on Sunday. And I know the Chargers know this. I'm sure most of the fans know this. This is going to be a tough match. A very, very tough match. And I'm very excited to see all of it come together, man. How is Jamar Chase going to fare against this Chargers secondary, who more or less have just been awesome and not allowing his, we'll say, calling card, big plays? The Chargers have just been this unbelievable unit when it comes to not letting up those big moments very often. Yeah, we've seen a few, sure. No team is perfect. No defense is invulnerable to that. But when it comes to other teams, that especially the Bengals have played this season, the Chargers don't let up that very many big plays on defense. That secondary, as much of a patchwork job it's been this season, missing Asante Samuel, Christian Fulton, who's coming back, who hasn't played in a long time. There's games without Derwin James, et cetera, et cetera. For how much they've had to move that unit and that secondary around, they've been unbelievably consistent and not allowing big plays. It really feels like that's the bread and butter of the Cincinnati Bengals, right? Sure, they can move the ball. Not on the ground, mind you. They have not been a good running football team, I'll say that much. Sure, they got some good players back there, but they have not been as efficient running the football, which is why they are who they are. They are a passing football team that really tries to set up and execute to a lot of their success this season. Big plays. Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, right? Future Charger. These guys are kind of built to do just that, and they've been very successful this season. And it's again, if you're Jesse Minter, and I think he said this in his most recent presser, kind of offense that keeps you up at night, this is probably your biggest test outside of the Chiefs, we'll say that. And maybe even more than the Chiefs in some cases, man. I don't know. I am, personally I am more intimidated by the Bengals offense than I am the Kansas City Chiefs' ability to win. Isn't that crazy? And isn't it crazy that you think of the win-loss record between these two teams? I mean, of course, the Chiefs have a much better defense. They're a much better, well-rounded unit. But I am much more concerned and aware of the danger that a Bengals team brings offensively to the table. And it's going to be a very interesting matchup for the Chargers, who, again, the reason I don't want to compare them to the Chiefs so much offensively is because, the Chargers kind of shut the Chiefs down, if you guys remember. Did they allow 17 points to Patrick Mahomes and company? And again, the Chiefs' offense isn't as good as it has been in the past, but it's not the same arena here. I really do believe that Jesse Minter, who's been amazing this season, is going to have an opportunity to really prove that, but it could just as easily go the other way just because of how good the Bengals are offensively. This is that unit that's been scoring 30, 40 points a game. Right, I think the actual metric is closer to 27 points a game, 27, 28 points a game, which is still really high. But you go take a look at their recent games. They're scoring 38, 40, 38, something like that, because that's what they have to do. Their defense is so bad that they're just at that point where it's, those fun teams of the past, what I'm talking about, where it's just hey, maybe not the best team, but they're going to score a lot, and it's always going to be high scoring. It's going to be one of those fun kind of, games week in and week out. The Dolphins, I guess, I don't know, or even the Rams a couple years ago. It really does feel that way with the Bengals. Their defense is really bad. They have to keep up in terms of their offense, and that really is where, again, the proving grounds comes back into the play. If Jesse Minter can really hold down the Bengals even just a little bit this week, Justin Herbert's going to have all the opportunity to play catch up this game. And again, it really could be that determining factor. If the Chargers defense can do just enough to hold down the fort, I do believe Herbert can make up for some lost ground there. But we'll get to that here in just a second. My point here is Joe, Jamar Chase, T, is it Chase Brown? All these guys add up to a fantastic Cincinnati Bengals offense. And it's one that all of us have to keep in mind are going to be very dangerous this week. And I do expect the Bengals to score. Chargers, who have been giving up top scoring defense, it's somewhere around 13 points per game. I don't see that very realistically happening this week, and the Chargers are going to have to adjust to that. There is something the Chargers can do in terms of throwing a wrench into the machine, though, and I do believe, again, and I've said this a couple of games this year, and you know what? I'm going to go ahead and pat myself in the back and saying I was right. I think the Chargers' defensive line, their edge position in particular, could be the heroes of this game. And we're going to need them. Because like we mentioned at the top of the show in the injury report, the Bengals are not that good of a team when it comes to pass protection. Their offensive line, and it's a tale as old as time, right? Joe Burrow running for his life, not too good. And the Chargers defensive line, mind you, I mean, yeah, the interior, who has started to show up recently, but as a whole, this unit has been unbelievable at generating pressure. Sure, we faced a lot of quarterbacks that have been tougher to bring down. They've been, more mobile, and Chargers kind of suck against that. Maybe the tackling needs some work. But if there's one thing for certain is that the Chargers are going to generate pressure. The sacks will come, but more importantly, the mistakes will be made. Joe Burrow is as human as they come, man. He's going to throw some picks. I've seen it. I've seen it a lot this season. He's my number one quarterback in like 3 leagues. I think across my fantasy football teams. So I've watched a lot of Joe Burrow, and I've feasted behind Joe Burrow, especially last week. You know what I mean? But I've seen my share of mistakes from Joe Burrow this season, and I think a lot of them have to do with the pressure screaming at him, the lack of protection from the Bengals offensive line, and maybe one of the bigger reasons why, the Bengals are in the situation that they are a lot of the times, where you're asking so much of Jamar and Joe Burrow, and I don't know. It feels like, and what I mean by that too is that by more turnovers, more opportunities for the opponent to score. You can imagine Justin Herbert capitalizing that on a couple of times, and that's just going to force Jamar and Burrow to have to play more hero ball. There's going to be more points scored, and it just kind of adds up to these shootouts, right? That's kind of the formula. And I do think one of the biggest determining factors, though, that could help swing things in the Chargers' favor could end up being that defensive line, the edge, the pressure generated. All in all, yes, the defenses, of course, win championships. But in particular in this matchup, we need to get at Joe Burrow. We need to cause some chaos. We need to get some pressure and force some bad decision-making by the Bengals offense, who are going to be throwing it very, very frequently this week. Very excited to see what kind of, damage that they can cause. Because that theory at the top of the season for the Chargers, where they said, hey, we're going to double down on the position of edge, it's been paying off big time. Hugely. As a matter of fact, I don't know where we are without that mentality this season. A lot of talk about Joey, Khalil, both, maybe moving on this offseason. The Chargers doubled down. They said, hey, we're going to keep Joey. We're going to keep Khalil. We already have Thule. We're going to go grab Bud Dupree. And that unit has just not slowed down all season long, because like we had predicted, there's been one or both of the big two guys, Joey, Khalil, that have been missing time, mainly Joey Bosa. But in their stead, you've seen guys like Thule Tuipulotu step up and have monstrous games. Thule, guys, I don't know if he leads the league right now. I think the last I saw he did. The last, is it 3 or 4 games? Thule's got 5.5 sacks, which is unbelievable. Which you're going to see because of the absence of, I think, Khalil Mack the last week, right? He's been more on a snap count. Joey Bosa's been on a snap count. He's been absent a lot too. You're just seeing these crazy games from Thule. And Bud's been getting in there too, man. Is he up to like 3 or 4 sacks all of a sudden now too? Like, these guys are getting in. And in a game such as this, where a lot's on the line and you really need to tilt, the game in your favor one way or another, you're going to need that unit to perform. I think they got it. I really do. Another aspect to this game, which is going to be interesting, is going to be the run game on both sides. Okay. The Chargers, of course, who are known or trying to become a run first or run balance offense, are going to need to try and find some success this week behind J.K. Dobbins and Gus Edwards, because the Bengals, as lackluster of a defense as they have been this season, the run defense is actually not too bad. I do still think that we can get the run game going. I do think the Bengals still allow over 100 yards per game. And it's going to be a factor this week. You might even see a little bit from Justin Herbert, right? But on the other side, you also got, my goodness, Zach Moss is hurt, right? So it's really, Chase Brown, who, mind you, I think is a great running back. I drafted him a lot in fantasy football. They are also going up against the Chargers defense that doesn't allow a lot of yards on the ground either. You may have thought differently at the top of the season, but now, it's going to be tough to run for both of these teams, which is going to push both of these teams to do what? Pass the football. That's another reason why I think this could end up being a high-scoring game. a high-volume passing game, and all in all, a longer game. You want to know something that's been kind of consistent this season if you're a Chargers fan? Doesn't it feel like the games go over like that, right? They start, they're done. It's because of how much we're running the football. The opponents are also running the football a lot, and these games are pretty short for the most part. This is going to be one of those games I think that's actually going to take a little bit of time because we already know that the Bengals are going to be throwing it all over the place. I think the Chargers, who are going to get a little bit of success running the football, are also going to be forced to throw a lot because you want to make sure that you stay ahead of the Bengals as much as possible offensively, and that's going to take one particular aspect of your team to accomplish, and that's this man right here. Justin Herbert, you're going to throw a lot this week. I really do think it's going to come down to Justin Herbert. Yes, the defense is going to be the narrative going into this game. Yes, there's a lot to prove in holding down the Bengals, hopefully. But Justin Herbert, I really think that when it comes down to the factors that are going to tilt the game one way or another, I think Justin Herbert, Joe Burrow, that battle needs a little bit more attention because I do think Justin Herbert's going to end up, standing on top. And it doesn't always mean, Herbert threw for 300-400 yards and here's Burrow only throwing for 200, or Justin scored 3 or 4 touchdowns and Burrow only scored 2. It doesn't always come down to that. It also comes down to who's making less mistakes. Justin Herbert's not thrown an interception in how long, dudes? It also comes down to who's playing more efficiently. Herbert's had like 115, 120 plus quarterback rating the last 4 or 5 weeks. Consecutively. It's been an insane stretch of games for Justin. Justin Herbert's playing as good a quarterback in the NFL as I've seen in a long time. He all of a sudden, this is going under the radar for a lot of people. Justin Herbert is as legitimate of an MVP candidate all of a sudden as anybody else in the league with how well he's been playing these last stretch of games. 4 or 5 games. It's been an awesome experience being a Justin Herbert fan. And ultimately, it could come down to Justin Herbert's ability to win this game. And I do believe that right now between the two quarterbacks, as amazing as I'm going to pay a lot of respect to the Bengals this week because I'm a big fan of Joe Burrow. I'm a big fan of Jamar Chase and that offense, right? As amazing as a quarterback as he can be, I think Justin Herbert right now is just playing better football. And I think he will be throwing the football. He will be finding a way, and he will be scoring. And it's going to make for an interesting, different, exciting experience for the Chargers this week. Who are going to be, tested defensively, but also maybe unearthing one of them vintage Justin Herbert games that we've seen the past 3-4 seasons, in which it's like, hey man, they're scoring, they're coming, they're running after us, and Herbert just doesn't allow him to get in front. He's gonna keep up, man. He's gonna be putting up points. He's gonna be finding a way. He's gonna be running. He's gonna be throwing. He's gonna be doing whatever he has to do. Keep this offense moving. And I do think we're gonna see an awesome game by Herbert. And it's gonna be, again, when you're talking about proving grounds, one of those games that really helps draw a line in the sand between Herbert and Burrow, which again I have a tremendous amount of respect for. And I think Herbert. Yes, the defense could end up being a big factor, but I think Herbert is the biggest reason why the Chargers would win this football game. There you have it, man. One of the funnest narratives in all of football this week. The Chargers, Bengals, unstoppable force meets immovable object. The force being the Bengals offense versus the Chargers defense. And again, a real chance to prove yourself here. Now, my score prediction is not going to reflect this. I mean, it kind of does, but, also doesn't. If Jesse Minter goes out there and limits the Bengals to under 20 points, or 20 points or under, we'll say. I don't know, man. There's already talk about him being a hot head coaching candidate this upcoming season. Yeah, man, that would be one of the ultimate proving grounds for him. But also the Chargers as a whole. We've been going up against some teams. And again, this case doesn't even change that much either with lesser win-loss records. But it's a really good opportunity for the Chargers to go in there and say, hey, man, all of these teams that we faced before, it wasn't a fluke. The Chargers are for real defensively, for real offensively. Here comes Justin Herbert. And this is a playoff caliber unit. The Chargers, dude, going 7-3 would be amazing. And here's my score prediction for this one that does reflect that. I think this is going to be an awesome game. I think it's going to be maybe one of the higher scoring games of the season for the Chargers as a whole. And I got them winning it. Chargers 30, the Bengals 24. The first team of the season, it could end up being the only team of the season that scores over 20 points for the Chargers or against the Chargers. I think it could end up being this Sunday night football game. But I do think Justin Herbert, like I mentioned, does enough to stay ahead, keep the team ahead. And as much as we would be like, oh man, there goes the streak in terms of defense, 24 points against the Bengals is still pretty good, right? That would still be a pretty good defensive performance by the Chargers defense. And it would allow Justin Herbert the opportunity to stay ahead. And I just think it all kind of comes together this week. A lot of the philosophies by Jim Harbaugh, Jesse Minter, even Greg Roman, all the things coming together to face off against an opponent that really matters. Big game, proving grounds. I think it all kind of comes together, fits like a glove. The puzzle pieces are starting to become, legible, and it makes for a pretty exciting week of football for Chargers fans. Well, guys, thank you so much for joining me. This has been The Director. If you like what you saw here, hit us up with a like and sub on your way out. We'll see you next time. And as always, bolt up and stay frost. Remember, you'll see me at the Ravens game. Excited to see you guys out there. Bolt up, baby. And give me a good 300-yard day for Justin Herbert, man. I think he's got it in him this week.